Good evening, Wilmington. Welcome to day 5 of the City Council budget hearings. Thank you if you've joined us before or this is your first time. We're in for a wonderful evening. So I would like to, of course, welcome you at home or in chambers. I would like to welcome, of course, our members of council who are here, Chief of Staff Washington, Chief of Staff Parikh, and department heads. As today is Monday, April 15th, and at this time I will call to order the Finance Committee budget hearing for this evening. Tonight there are 2 budget hearings slated. We have the Treasurer's Office, followed by the IT Department. There is first a legislative item that we will be addressing before we go into the Treasurer's Office. The first start by recognizing members of the Finance Committee in attendance. Vice Chair Harley, 4th District.
Present.
Councilmember Oliver, 3rd District.
Present.
Councilmember Bracy at large.
Present.
Councilmember Field, 8th District. Okay. Councilmember Spadola at large.
Present.
And Council President Congo.
Here.
All right. I'd like to also recognize other council persons in attendance by doing roll call. Councilmember Mills at large.
Present.
Councilmember Cabrera. Let's see. Councilmember Fields, 5th District. Councilmember Darby.
Present.
Okay. I have you down, Fields. And Councilmember White, I have you down.
Present.
1st District. And Councilmember McCoy. All right, so just in terms of just what we're here for tonight is the mayor presented his proposed budget for the city's use of budgetary funds at the mayor's annual budget address on March 21st. In the mayor's budget address, he proposed a 0% property tax rate increase, 9% water sewer rate increase, along with a 6% stormwater rate increase, and a transfer of $1 million from the tax stabilization fund. The proposed total general fund budget is $192 million, which is a $9.6 million increase over last fiscal year. The water sewer fund budget is $90 million in total, which is a $5.5 million increase over last fiscal year. The city does not have a capital budget program this year as it's an even year. In a proposed general fund budget, we end up doing the math, we have a surplus of $5.7 million. The budget does factor into a proposed new EMS department within fire department. This potential cost total impact will be about $4.5 million. Negotiations with St. Francis, the current provider, are in flux right now, and we will find out more at the April 29th budget hearing, or the budget hearing coming up later this month. So at this time now, after the mayor proposed his budget, is now council's fiduciary responsibility to review the budget, conduct budget hearings, vet the budget line by line, and get a complete plan and a compromise plan on how we can best use the city's funds to continue moving the city forward. By charter, council must adopt a balanced budget at least 30 days before the end of fiscal year, and this has to be done by ordinance. We already shared our priorities as council with the mayor. This includes doubling down on public safety initiatives, continuing to invest in our neighborhoods through neighborhood stabilization, and also focusing on economic development and helping our minority and small businesses. Before I turn it over to OMB, but before I would turn it to OMB for the treasurer's portion, we do have a legislative item proposed. There's a resolution, and this is a piece by Councilmember Oliver, and there's a resolution recommending cost of living adjustment for pension beneficiaries as a budget priority. So we're going to hit this item first and then go into OMB. So let's move to the legislative item. Councilmember Oliver, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You just stated this resolution is recommending a cost of living adjustment for pension beneficiaries as a budget. The resolution is being presented by City Council for Council's review and approval, 2022-2025 Wilmington City Council Strategic Plan, This resolution recommends that the administration includes a cost of living adjustment, COLA, for pension beneficiaries among the top budgetary priority going forward.
All right, it's a pretty straightforward legislative item, but are there any questions or comments by members of council? All right, seeing none, I will then open up the floor for public comment, either in chambers or in Zoom. Okay, all right, seeing none, since this is a pretty self-explanatory item, and it's a resolution, so it does not need to be voted out of committee. So it will move forward. And actually, I'll give it to the sponsor. Any final comments?
Now, I had attended the meeting with the pensioners, and they hadn't had a pension, they hadn't had an increase, I think, over like 15 years or something like that.
Okay. Very good, very good. So at this time, again, it's a resolution. So I believe it will be moved to the agenda. I guess we're looking at May 2nd. It will be on the full council floor. Okay. All right. Well, thank you all for hanging tight. I know during budget hearings, we periodically, and as we come through this, we will have some legislative items because, again, due to time constraints, we have to slide a few pieces in. But we appreciate you folks at home sticking with us. All right. So, and it's just the ground rules again, as it is our protocol for budget hearings. We of course welcome public input and comment. Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes, and we can't hit each and everything today. Chief Financial Officer Ms. Marshall Bassnight will actually be documenting any all questions. So follow up that's necessary by any city department. We will make sure it's posted on our city council budget website. And just remember, of course, for council members, please raise your hand if you wish to be recognized either in person or in Zoom. And then also, please remember all questions to be of a budgetary fiscal matter, not operational, as we can take those talks offline. This time, I would just like to believe it's Mr. Nahid Hassan from OMB. It is your night tonight, so it's glad to see you again. You'll do a fiscal overview of the Treasurer's Office, and then you'll hand it over to Treasurer Dwayne Sims, and we will have his hearing, and then it's tentatively scheduled for 90 minutes maximum. All right.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Council President, Council Chief of Staff, and honorable members of City Council. On behalf of the Office of Management and Budget, I will present the Treasurer's Office proposed operating budget for FY 2025. Next slide, please. The department's proposed operating budget request, which includes general and pension funds, total almost $7 million, an increase of $268,000 or 4%. Next slide, please. In the general fund, the department requests a total budget of about $469,000. Personal services increased by roughly $20,000 or 5.7%. MS&E decreased by $3,100 or 3.7% reduction. Next slide, please. In the pension funds, the department requests a total budget of about $6.5 million, an increase of $250,000. Next slide, please. Notable general fund changes are highlighted in this slide. As you can see, personal services increased $20,000. Most of the increases are from regular salaries, a $17,000 increase. The increase is due to the implementation of the city's compensation and classification study. MS&E netted a $3,100 decrease. Consultant decreased by almost $26,000 to align more closely with historical trends. This decrease helped the department reallocate funds to new initiatives and priorities. Travel and registration fees increased a total of $10,000 to increase This increase will be directed towards a cross-registration model consisting of virtual trainings and on-site conferences for professional development. Lastly, an additional $11,000 was added to the community service line to do more sponsorships and support community events. Next slide, please. On the pension side, the annual self-insurance funding target for retiree medical cost in the pension healthcare fund was increased by $250,000, bringing the total funding for the program to $5 million for FY 2025. That concludes my overview of Treasurer's Office proposed budget. I'll be happy to answer any question you might have at this time about the budget. Thank you.
All right. Does anybody on council have any questions specifically for OMB regarding the treasurer's office? Okay. Yes, Vice Chair Harley.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the overview. My question is regarding community services. I know that during the last administration, there was quite a bit of funds in the, I don't think it was called community services, but I know that it was set at one amount and then it went down. So I guess basically what I'm saying is, do you see the need to increase the funds for community services even more than the 11,000? Because I think the number was like in the 30s, somewhere around that number. Okay. Pension. No, that's not the slide. I'm going back to.
It's a slide prior.
Yeah, major funding, yeah, that slide there, the last line where it says community services, 11,000. My bottom line is this, is that enough in terms of what you're trying to do in the community? Because as we know, there's a lot of great things that are happening in the community.
Yes.
And it's great that it's up because that means that we're more engaged, we're more involved. And so I just wanted to point that out, that I do think that's great. And there was, I think, a larger amount, and then it went down, or it went over to the general fund. I'm sorry that I don't quite.
No, I'm happy to elaborate.
Yeah, so,
No, I'm sorry. I think council, committee chair mentioned it. I just want to yield to OMB in case there's
Yes, if it's a question OMB can answer, certainly, but if that's a question that you can answer, I mean, you can do it now if you can.
If not, I'm more than happy to
Yes, I mean.
speak to it. Okay, I just didn't want to break protocol. All right. Thank you, Councilperson Harley. I appreciate the question, and thank you for the acknowledgement for the increase. Just to give some contextual, because I think there's historical context you're looking for there. In our first budget after coming into office in 2021, we actually decreased the amount of community services quite significantly in that budget, and I think that's what you were referring
Yes.
to earlier, just a moment ago.
Yes.
And to your point, yes, it was sitting, I think, just below $28,000 in that line, inheriting that from my predecessor. We did make some substantive changes and decreases to community services because, of course, as you all know, we would focus, and I mentioned in our initial budget hearing, our goal was to focus primarily on looking inward and making some substantive changes. So you saw our consultants line increase associated with those priorities going back to that budget. Subsequently, over the last 3 budgets, we've been able to do some really great work. I hope folks see it as great work in the office by looking inward and allocating those financial resources inward as opposed to outward, but still leveraging our partnerships throughout the community to have a presence and support community work. Well, as you can see here, sponsorships are going up in this, proposed to go up in this budget to really match toward, kind of track and trend towards what we've seen in over the last 3 years, which is, to your point, a substantial need. We've seen an uptick in activity in the community. We can talk about Wilmington Public Library, for example. Congratulations on your award, by the way, well deserved. So whether it's that or Spending Black Matters by the Influencers Lab or other significant events, we like to get behind those as much as possible. The first 3 years, we wanted to leverage relationships as much as possible, but we saw there was a continuing economic trend of just need. And so we wanted to try to match that here. And so you see a reduction in consultants because we were able to get some great work done over the last 3 years, and we're trying to reallocate it in other areas. But they're all consistent, as you'll see in the next few slides, with our priorities as an office.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments of the fiscal changes? All right. Saying none, then I will then turn the floor over to Treasurer Sims. If you could introduce any members of the staff who you would like to recognize or who are here with you in person or virtually, and then we can dive into, I guess, your department's overview and then jump right into a question and answer. And similar to always, we'll do your preset questions first, so we'll slide through those first, make sure we hit them, and then we'll circle back with any questions. So any council members, if you have a question, again, please write it down, take a note, so then we can follow up with Treasurer Sims. All right, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So first and foremost, good afternoon, Mr. Chair, of course, CFO Bassnight, and of course, Vice Chair Harley, and all the committee persons and council persons here in person or virtually. It's my pleasure to be before you all this afternoon, to present the Treasurer's Office fiscal year 2025 budget. First and foremost, my sincere appreciation for the partnership for Director Greco. Of course, Naheed, as our OMB analyst, thank you very much for all the work that you do to support the Treasurer's Office. We appreciate that. Of course, acknowledgement, I see our Chief of Staff, Tanny Washington, is here as well, so I'd like to acknowledge her. And of course, my Deputy Treasurer, Alfred Lance, is here as well. So we're excited to present. Obviously, you know, we're in the Treasurer's Office. Our day is dominated by economics, right? But we are excited, as you can see, and I just gave a brief overview, you know, touched on it briefly, about really the work that we've been able to do, some of the things we've been able to accomplish over the last 3 years. We'll speak to some of that in the course of the questions. But of course, we're really also excited to deliver on, as you'll see in the next slide when we get to it, the bottom commitment to the community, the bottom highlighted item. And so hence the $11,000 reallocation in the budget. But I'll start first with our vision. It's been the same, and it'll continue to be the same. The goal here is to be a best-in-class Treasury Operations Center, focused on the pursuit of excellence and execution against our core operating principles. You see what those principles are here in front of you, but essentially they're grounded in ethical decision-making and statutory regulatory compliance. Of course, collaborative work is, I strive and endeavor for that to be a hallmark of our administration with our internal and external partners. Strong governance model over our operations, of course, sound financial stewardship, and last but not least, to be a consistent, and I think the operative word there is consistent, community partner in promoting the overall health and wellness of all of our city employees in Wilmington communities. And so as you see there, I highlight distinguish between city employees and our Wilmington communities, because it's both. Whether it's Fall Fest or if we're out in the community, we want to be consistent partners in those endeavors. Next slide, please. So the top priorities for the Office of the Treasurer, again, they do not change for us. We are focused on all of these items. Governance being at the top of the list. Again, strong compliance, sound stewardship, and 100% compliance with all statutes and regulations. So we do not want to be out of compliance at all. It's not an easy task, keeping our eye on so many different balls, whether that's regulatory, statutory, or legal, but that's our goal, and so far, so good. Modernization, you'll see there, whether that's internal controls and policies, for example, instituting new fraud measures that had not been in place against the city's primary accounts. We've been diligent about doing that and putting those kinds of anti-fraud measures in place and leveraging the technology available across the online platforms with our banking partners to do so. Or creating a hierarchy and how we release and approve our financial transactions on a daily basis. So just coming up to speed, again, to the vision, a 21st century Treasury Operations Center, to be efficient in all that we do. It's not always easy, but at the end of the day, that's what we strive to do, and that's our goal. Whether it's internal operations, procedures, making enhancements, the goal is to drive to be efficient to drive optimal results. And last but not least, as I've mentioned a few times here, so you can probably tell I'm excited about it, but outreach. And of course, the goal here has always been to cultivate strategic partnerships. The goal is impact at the bottom line. So we like to partner with organizations in the community that have and are creating impactful educational, social, cultural enrichment opportunities for our city employees, as I mentioned with Fall Fest, or for that matter, the greater Wilmington community as well. Next slide, if you will, please. The request has been made in the statute of questions here around our performance measures. So what I've done here is I've updated this slide to capture some of the most recent changes in performance. Again, these all tie back to the previous slide with our priorities, which tie back to the vision. And so how do we gauge how we're performing? A three-pillar system is what I've instituted from the very beginning and taking office on January 6, 2021. First and foremost, our goal is to reduce risk to the city, reduce risk to the office of the treasurer, and increase returns on behalf of the city, whether that's in our cash and investments or, for that matter, across the pension, which represents almost 60% of our total budget and assets under management. I should say, excuse me, not budget, but assets under care. So you see some bullet points here. I won't read through them all, but in short, we restructured our pension advisor relationship for the first time in years or ever to significantly reduce the city's fiduciary risk in the plan. We are on target this year to update the city's 457B retirement plan as well. In fact, we were just talking about that in my office prior to this meeting with our Representative Tom Clooney, who comes on site once a month to meet with employees. And today he was with WPD and had a back-to-back meeting, so a very successful day. We do weekly portfolio rebalancing reviews with our advisor in the pension. Of course, a diversified approach to cash banking and our investment relationships. What has that done? That's produced consistently high yields on our cash deposits that we have across two different banking institutions. I'll speak on that a little bit later as well. We'll have a few bullet points on that. Actually, excuse me, I included them here. So Treasury has exceeded our fiscal year 2023 interest projection incomes by $4.25 million, and then you also see they're expected to be around $3 million for this year as well. In our last presentation, we spoke about the strategies and measures that we took to get to this point, along with obviously just the dynamic interest rate environment as well. So that's the first pillar. The second pillar was to reduce our fee expense ratios. Very important, right? Very simply put, what that means is how do we reduce the money it takes us that we spend in order to make the money that we make, right? That's our fee expense. So we were able to negotiate by working with our pension advisor a 0.16% reduction in investment manager fees. And currently, we have a 0.13% reduction in the all-in fee. So that's the manager fee plus the advisor fee. That's the difference between the management fees and the all-in fee. 0.13, 0.16% may not sound like a lot, but when you're talking about $300+ million, that adds up very quickly. And so as you can see, Treasury is on target to save the pension fund $379,000 this year. That is up from the previous year's presentation at around $286,000. And so I want to be clear about that savings and what that looks like. That money that's money that the pension fund would have been spending to make money in the fund, right? So it's not, it's real dollars in the sense that it's not an expenditure, but it's not, it just goes back into the fund. Hopefully to the point where we get to a point where we can become fully funded as a pension even faster than we would have. So being efficient, back to some of our earlier priorities stated. Last but not least, the third pillar of our performance measure has always been our commitment as an office to diversity, equity, inclusion. Operative word for me has always been equity, right? That's folks a lot of times like to talk about diversity, inclusion, and belonging, and so a lot of times the equity piece gets left out of the conversation. Unfortunately, that's been the case in a lot of ways. that stated, we have a huge focus on that out of our office. We've been focused on that since taking office January 6, 2021. And we decided to do that and start with the pension first. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, it represents almost 60% of our assets under care. So we worked with our advisor and the pension board chair, Director Taylor, to amend the investment policy statement for the first time in recent history. We included, amongst other things, a mandatory minimum of 51% MWBE investment manager participation. That stands for Minority Women Business Enterprises. We've been very clear about reporting on that. So anyone who has participated or visited, logged in during our pension board meetings, we actually report out on that on a quarterly basis as well, on how we are performing specifically with the MWBE portfolio, in addition to the larger portfolio. As it stands currently, the pension retirement plan has 61% plan assets managed by MWBE investment managers. That is record setting. And I want to be very clear about that, whether you're talking at the county, state, or for that matter with our peers across the nation. 61% MWBE participation. That means currently we're sitting at just over, well, as of 3/31/24's report, over $180 million invested with MWBE investment managers. In some later slides in the presentation, you'll see what that breakout looks like across women and
Treasurer,
minorities. Yes, sir.
Sims, I don't want to interrupt. I know there's always a lot of lingo and
Yes.
shorthand. Could you explain what MWBE is for those folks that
Sure. It stands for Minority Women Business Enterprises. So we're talking about minimum 51% owned and operated by minority-owned firms, Latino, African-American, women-owned firms, investment management firms, or other.
And we'll obviously delve into that more, but $180 million. So it's 51%, 61% of the $181 million.
No, 61% of the total assets in the pension. At that time, per the 331 notice, we're just over 310 million.
All right. Go ahead.
So that 180 is the true number at 61%. Yes, sir. Thank you for the clarifying questions. Any questions about those priorities, performance measures, and vision before we dive into the budget hearing questions?
Vice Chair Harley?
Thank you. Under the reduced fee expense ratio,
Yes, ma'am.
the 379, is that a year-over-year savings or one and done?
No, that's a great question. That would be our annualized savings. So that is for this fiscal year.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Very well. All right. Well, thank you very much. Now let's dive into
And I should be clear,
Yep.
just to be clear, that's projected. Obviously, things change, right? But that's where we're trending towards now. And so we're excited about that, and we look forward to hopefully that'll continue along those trends. There are things that impact that, market fluctuation, of course, any portfolio rebalancing that we might do with our advisor. That could change if we switch investment managers. It can obviously have a change in management fees, which could impact that bottom line number. But with the portfolio allocation that we have now, that is our projection.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
So let's dive into question one, and is very has multiple subparts. So let's
It
take our
does.
time to go through this.
It does.
Okay, it actually ties to the legislation that was presented by Councilmember Oliver earlier this evening. So, understand that you oversee a pension fund of approximately $330 million.
Correct.
So could you discuss the retiree pensioner issue plus cost of living adjustments and how you're approaching that as a evaluation as we move forward? Because my understanding hasn't been done for over 10 years. So you can dive into that question.
Yes. So in short, it has not been done in some time. In fact, we looked at in our office, let me be clear, I'm speaking about through the Pension Commission specifically.
And WITN, if we could go to slide 1A.
Well, actually, we'll start with slide one.
Yeah. Yeah,
If we could
let's
go
start.
back one slide, that'd be great. I just think it's important to highlight these things here very quickly, if I may, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Yes, we are speaking specifically with respect to the Pension Commission. And so that is, just to be clear, that is our the current statutory and budgetary mechanism, because that's the question here, right? What if any, discuss if there are any budgetary mechanisms in place. And I think the operative word here that jumps out to me is to ensure retiree pensioners receive some type of cost of living adjustment or COLA. And so, you know, I think it's very important. The short answer is there is no budgetary mechanism to ensure that one takes place, right? Because ensure is quite definitive. In fact, though, the Pension Commission is the statutory mechanism, which has a budgetary component, as I'm sure everyone here is familiar with, in subsection D or C, I believe, of the code, to consider the financial viability of a COLA on an annual basis. And as I mentioned, that charge is particularly articulated in 39-6. So you'll see there in A, the establishment of it, what is the point to conduct annual reviews of the overall financial condition of the city. And in subsection C, certain responsibilities there. It's the only agenda item that we take up. And of course, I chair that commission every year for the last 4 years. And then, of course, last but not least, 39-6D to review the overall fiscal condition of the city. But it articulates explicitly what we should be looking at. And I think that's very important, right? When we put on our hat going into the Pension Commission, and as the commission chair, I go to great lengths to set the tone for the commission of what is, as it states here on 39-6C, the only action to be taken, right? We're there to consider the fiscal health of the city in the context of whether or not a cost of living adjustment is in the city's best interest. And based on a specific review of criteria, and those recent reports issued by the WEFAC, as you see there, the Wilmington Financial and Economic Advisory Committee, and the City's Expenditure Review Board. So what does that look like for me when we get ready to do that once a year? I engage our Office of Management and Budget to come in and give a presentation, a light, short presentation about those items. Expenditure review, we talk about what that looks like. We talk about what the 5-year projections and budget look like. And that's the stuff, those are the materials that are shared with the WEFAC as well. I've also bring in our actuary, because I understand that many folks on the commission may not be familiar with the pension, or maybe only look at this information once a year. And so to reorient everyone, I like to bring in our actuaries as well to explain about what the pension is and where it stands and what our unfunded liability, et cetera, looks like, which I know there are some questions about that in here as well, which we've answered. So again, just to set the stage here, right? Very clear what we're there to do every year. The mechanism is in place as a statutory, if you will, mechanism, which has budgetary components on how, if the Pension Commission in its deliberation determines that a recommendation is made to City Council and to the Mayor's administration for a COLA, exactly how that should move after that recommendation is made. That's articulated as well. So to answer the question succinctly, it's not a budgetary mechanism to ensure anything happens, but the mechanism is there for the consideration to review the fiscal health of the city and make a recommendation.
All right, so jumping to 1A.
Yes.
You can specify the, when's the last time, break it down when the unions
Sure.
last receive a COLA
Yes,
increase.
we haven't been able to find one within the last 10 years. Does not exist, and I'm pretty sure you all know that already as well, but yes, I would concur, that's the case, it's not there. And so what does that mean? That means that the Pension Commission is met every year, and I have many of those votes right here, and I think it's important, it behooves me to mention, for everyone's edification, this Pension Commission's composition, right? The Pension Commission's membership is articulated in the legislation. It's a 13-member committee, and that's made up of representatives from the Mayor's Office administration at that time. The Treasurer chairs it. It's made up of several individuals from City Council at that time, as well as representatives from our respective unions, as well as fire and police. Okay.
Okay.
So as you can see here on question 1A, there are 6 different pension plans, and they contain multiple, the members across multiple unions and collective bargaining agreements, right? So they're all administered per the code, section 39, for pensions, and they're administered without distinction, if you will, under each plan. It's the legislation that governs its administration. And so, of course, the second bullet point we just spoke to already. Okay.
And then what about one-time pension payments?
Yes.
What's the breakdown of that? within the
If we go to the next slide. So you'll see here, we captured, which I believe was mentioned in your resolution, Councilperson Oliver. You mentioned in 2019 for fiscal year 2020, there was a one-time payment made. Again, a decision that came at the recommendation upon review by the Pension Commission at that time for $1,000 stipend. And I think the language here is important. It was in lieu of a COLA. When you look at the recommendation memo from the commission. So the recommendation was a $1,000 one-time stipend in lieu of the COLA to uniform and non-uniform pension benefit recipients, specifically for pension recipients that receive benefits that total less than $20,000 annually. To your question, Mr. Chair, there were additional payments as well that we here in the Office of the Treasurer, based on state code and the Delaware General Assembly, under Delaware Code Chapter 7, Title 18, Section 708, we reach out based on the relationship that we have with the Office of Pensions and this authorizing legislation. Police and fire pension benefits beneficiaries, have received special one-time payments under this legislation in 2019, 2021, and 2023 most recently. We've broken those payments down in the bullet points below. Keep in mind, and I think this is a very important distinguishing point, these payments are subject to availability by the state, so they make the determination on availability, and we work with them to make sure they get the relevant and appropriate current information for these union pension beneficiaries. Also important, this is only enacted when the city did not or does not provide a COLA to its pension benefit recipients in the previous year. It's very important as we talk about this resolution that's been presented today, and that I know I think is set to go in front of council floor on May 2nd. I think that's a very important distinguishing fact that should be considered with great deliberation. I can't stress it enough. Why am I saying that? Because recipients in this situation may not make more than $35,000 a year in annual benefits. So I want to take a moment to just paint a picture for you here what that could look like, right? So this is, by the way, this is every 2 years it's considered. That's why you see 2019, 2021, and 2023. The legislation states the city may not enact a COLA the year prior. So let's just say for 2022, if there was a COLA for pensioners, any one of those pensioners who would have normally received, as you can see here, and we're talking uniform here, so the third bullet point, just over $3.4 million was distributed to 390 pensioners who were making less than $35,000 a year, right? Had a COLA been enacted in 2022, those individuals would not have received that payment. And that's very important. And we're talking about substantial payments. $3,000, $6,000, and $9,000 payments to each one of those pension recipients. Yes, ma'am.
No, I was going to say, Mr. Chair, we can, thank you. I was going to say, I appreciate you talking about the legislation, but we could talk about it offline if I need to make some adjustments, but I want to stick to the agenda because I know
Sure.
we're on a time frame also.
Oh, of course.
Thank
Yeah. So everything I've been discussing is well within the parameters of question 1B. And so I just want to provide the context because these things are very important. But these are the one-time payments that you've seen, that you inquired about in question 1B. And of course, as you see in the third bullet point with the details they're under, very important how that's handled, and those are the parameters.
And if we go to 1C, if we talk about the leveling up of non-union and union, what is the process for that over the past 10 years?
Sure. And so, I think the question has two parts as I read it, and, union membership, non-union membership, and then it gets into non-union pensioners and retiree pensioners. Seems to me, as upon my reading, there's a distinction there between the pensioners and the non-pensioners. Anything that I'm going to speak about today in this context of this question is around our pensioners, right? Because I don't have direct authority, purview, or for that matter, line of sight into any other negotiations that may be taking place that don't concern pensioners. So pension benefits, as you see, they are plan-driven. Each plan is governed by city code. You can tell there's wide variances in the richness of those benefits provided between the plans. As I just mentioned, negotiation beyond those in existing code and pensioners are not in our purview. And of course, this is also a very important point as we deliberate COLAs or anything else. You know, city pension plans, we're talking about legacy plans. We're not talking about the state, county, municipal plan, right? We're talking about the legacy 6 plans that are mentioned later in the presentation. Those plans have been closed since 2011. And so, you know, they're intended to sunset at some point and reach, obviously, if we manage it properly, to reach 100% being fully funded. So I think that's very important. And so why did we close them? It's articulated in the legislation from then, but the bottom line is we leverage the state's economies of scale for better returns. And we get out of the business, the city got out of the business, which is very costly, of managing on an ongoing basis the future obligation of consistent pension.
All right.
Or a consistent pension program, I should say.
Understood. Moving to 1D, you can talk about the compensation study that was recently performed by PFM.
Certainly. So at this juncture, I think it mentions that, as we know, that study did not include pensions or pensioners. So at this time, there are no current plans to conduct a compensation study. We don't have that in the budget. And in fact, as I articulated initially, and you know, the Pension Commission is really the mechanism in place, currently anyway, in place, to make those assessments, deliberations, and come to those conclusions, and hopefully a recommendation of some sort comes out of it. And I think it also, I don't know if I mentioned this initially, but the recommendation must be by majority rule as well.
Okay. All right, moving on to question number 2. We could, this is a question really about the financial health of the city.
Yes, sir.
You know, we look at neighbors such as Chester and the financial distress they have. What best practices are you employing for cash and investment strategies? And again, I know you touched on some of it during opening, so just kind of close it with
Move
things
through.
you did not account for.
Indeed.
In the opening.
And so you'll see here, I mean, I no need to read them, but you see several bullet points there. At the bottom line is that the Treasury is mandated to maintain a conservative approach to our cash management and investment policies. We center them around a couple of key points, being highly liquid, fully collateralized accounts, and low-risk financial products. So that's our realm, that's our world that we move in. Those bullet points that you see there, high interest daily sweep account, we've been able to negotiate with our banking partner that holds that daily sweep account, substantive, meaningful rate increases that have yielded us, you know, higher than ever rate of return of interest on that sweep account. In fact, it actually mirrors it very closely to what we're seeing in the CD market for us now at just under 5%. Just under 4%. We have a primary, secondary, and tertiary setup for our cash across checking accounts, CDs, and of course the general fund as well. And primary government, I think this is important when we're talking about what we're talking about, security of principal at the end of the day. In both of our banking relationships where cash, CDs, and investments are, we have over 100% collateralization on all of our funds deposited.
Okay, all right, understood. And you can move to the next subpart 2A, just anything to highlight there in terms of the budget reserve accounts?
Sure.
Budget reserve funds.
Funds, yes. In short, the question to 2A, the budget reserve account funds have not been accessed during our administration and did not see a record. But it has not been accessed during our administration. Of course, those reserve funds, as I kind of intimated in the previous slide, are invested in short to medium term CDs. And so there's, as you all know, I don't need to tell you, but there's an entire process, you know, on how and when those can be accessed. So those are in segregated account. and/or segregated instruments, and we roll them in short to medium-term CDs.
And can you specify if the city's cash and investments are diverse?
Yes, to the extent that they can be, for sure. As I mentioned initially, we are required to kind of invest in low-risk products. So there's a small suite of products, candidly, that we can invest in. And across that suite of products, they are diversified. We deploy a strategy of primary, secondary, and tertiary levels of investment based on the term of the CD or the term of the investment, the type of account, and then, of course, what account, which financial institution, which banking partner they're placed with as well. And part of our governance model is to go to the market every time a certificate of deposit, every time a CD comes for maturity, we go to the market across a consortium of banks and request that they bid as well. And we track that, and we report on that to our internal auditors as well, upon request.
Okay. All right, and can you discuss the cash balance of the ARPA
Sure.
investment fund?
So you can see the ARPA balance as of 4/15/2024 was just under $21 million, $20,803,980.59. However, I'm distinguishing that balance. That's the invested ARPA balance. The available ARPA cash balance is slightly over $17 million. $17,123,221.88. That amount is less, so that $17 million amount is less the 20 because there's a pending reconciliation of just over $3.6 million that takes us through our normal reimbursement exercise to the general fund, and that'll be as of 3/31/24. So these are our quarterly, you'll see them mentioned in here, DTDF, due from reimbursement exercises of the general fund. So I thought it was important to distinguish between the invested amount we have now and then the reconciled balance that we'll do on 3/31
Okay.
to highlight the available amount.
Very well. This is another follow-up question about ARPA. Question 3. There's been funding obviously over the past few fiscal years, both especially for capital budget programs. Can you please share the mechanism in place to determine the best use for these capital investment funds?
Sure, indeed. So the treasurer's seat is a unique seat. It does obviously sit on the bond committee. And then, of course, we are also on the capital review committee as well. So, but I think it's important, and I mentioned this in the last presentation, the Office of the treasurer's seat, actually does not determine the projects, right? Those projects are determined by the mayor's office and his department heads. But I do have a role in helping to influence indirectly, or directly, if you count the seats of the boards and commissions, vetting the veracity of the projects, right? And so that's number one, I think. So we don't have that direct influence over the selection, but we do have some influence. I think the other thing to highlight here is that once those projects are determined, we're in a fortunate environment right now, a borrowing environment. We have been in a unique borrowing environment for many years, but it's still fortunate. What do I mean by that? The state has been very supportive for municipalities throughout the state, leveraging transportation infrastructure investment funds, water sewer projects, et cetera. So there are opportunities where we might normally go to the bond market for a capital project, to finance a capital project, where we can actually now access alternate opportunities for funding these kinds of projects, oftentimes with principal forgiveness or for some portion or all of the available balance. That has put us and other cities who've taken advantage of these available programs in a very nice position where we can obviously not have to go to the capital markets as often, which reduces our debt service, which helps the bottom line across the board. So I think that was important to note. I think there's also questions here about mechanisms to ensure the best use, but also negative arbitrage, right?
Mm-hmm.
Unique position we're all in. I think I should begin by saying we've engaged with actually we were already engaged, the Office of the Treasurer was already engaged by my predecessors with an advisor around tax strategies and arbitrage with respect to debt. no one foresaw the change in rate environment that we experienced in just the last 12 months, 12 to 18 months. And so that explosion, if you will, of rates has put us in an unenviable, and not just us, but anyone who has debt financing in an unenviable position to have to really dig down and try to manage at another level here that explosion of rates. What does that mean? That the bottom line is that we do have negative arbitrage. We do have arbitrage exposure. We are managing that with our advisors over at PFM, who's the city's debt advisor. They have a specific department for tax and arbitrage issues, and we're working with their director now to determine what that true exposure will be as we prepare to report to the IRS in the latter part of this calendar year.
Yeah, again, I try to break down really
Sure.
heady words. Can you explain for the public what arbitrage is, or even members of the
I'll put it
council?
Indeed. In short, what it means is that we borrow at a certain rate, and part of the benefit that the city receives of borrowing at lower rates is that the government requires that you can't make but so much on that money. It's the easiest way to put it, right? So if we're getting it, I think, below market rates, they want to make sure that we're not just taking the money. We're actually using it for the projects that we articulated in the bond agreement, and that we're actually the disposition of the funds are happening in an efficient manner, and that we're not just sitting on that money, making money on it, because they've afforded us the rate to borrow it, the benefit of borrowing it at a lower rate. Right? So when you get into a situation where you're now making more money than they've capped you to allow to make, you run into that arbitrage situation where you run afoul of the regulations associated with the borrowing agreement, the capital borrowing agreement. And so we were in a situation, and I think it's important to note this as well, rates for years post-COVID, and during and post-COVID, were like rock bottom to 0.02%, 0.04%. If the ceiling is 2% that we're allowed to hit, we've had years of not getting any, achieving anywhere near that level of rate of return. The good thing about it is that when we do settle up with the IRS and we work with PFM, our group there on that, the tax group on that, those essentially, think of those as like credits, right? So you've built up credit with only earning 0.02% for X amount of years, where you could have been earning up to 2%. So now when we're in a situation where rates get increased, as we've seen over the last 18 months or so, consistent basis to now over 4%, let's just use 4% as a base. Now you're over by 2% of what you were allowed to make on that money, okay? The good thing is, how much did you make? Well, when we settle up with the IRS, we'll deduct that from whatever credits that we earned when we were making 0.02% as opposed to the 2% we were allowed to make. So there's a reconciling, if you will, that has to happen across these segregated and dedicated accounts. Our advisor will work with us to get that work done. We work obviously with our good folks in finance, our partners there, to get the information that we need, work with the advisor to make sure that we settle that, and then of course report accordingly every 2 years to the IRS.
All right, very well. Now, if you could discuss whether the city is within the mandated 17.5 budgetary legal debt limit set by the state.
Yes, Mr. Chair, short answer is yes. You'll see in our most recent 2023 annual reporting, city's government funds debt service payments at just over 14.6 for the fiscal year 2023, which are well within the statutory limit at about 8.2%.
Okay, all right. Now I'm just going to go inward facing.
Yes,
talk
sir.
about outward city type matters, but I know your office is responsible for many aspects of the city, but let's break it down to internal, and this is pretty straightforward. I know you have a pretty lean and mean department, so just dive into question 4. We could talk about just any proposed position changes that you have in your department.
2 salary adjustments have been budgeted as part of the the leveling up, if you will, of the positions for deputy treasurer and cash manager. Those were initially articulated by my colleague Naheed in OMB in his overview. So you saw those in salaries on the overview page. I think it's important to note that neither position has been afforded a budget pay increase in the past 4 years. But we do not have any new or deleted, no changes to our staff at this time. We are, as you mentioned, Mr. Chair, a lean and efficient shop. And of course, no changes nor appeals either.
Okay. And no changes based off the PFM's study?
There was a recommended pay increase for the position of the city treasurer, which is found, and you see there, again, not having a pay increase at 4 years, but also more importantly, I think the third bullet point, the study highlighted how the city treasurer's office salary is lower than its counterparts throughout the county and throughout the state. And based on those considerations that are articulated in that draft compensation study, which I believe the council's had an opportunity at least to review, they recommended a raise to the position of city treasurer, that the salary be consistent with the current levels for E&M, executive and managerial positions that are just meeting standards. I hope I'm doing a better job than meeting standards, but nonetheless, that was a recommendation.
Very well. Going to question 5, you can discuss the self-insurance targets for retiree medical costs.
Yes, so this is the same we've been doing every year. There's a $250,000 increase that we do as part of, we budget for to essentially plan in advance and strategize around what we anticipate will be rising medical costs. And so it's just a prudent budgetary matter that we do associated with the OPEB funding policy that was put in place in 2010.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, hopefully, we get to a point, Mr. Chair, where, you know, those costs are not realized and we've been maybe overfunding and we can maybe scale that back. I know that's been part of the discussions at the pension board meetings. It is something that I'm sure we'll be looking at quite closely if we need to adjust that strategy.
Okay. All right. And turning to question 6, if you can discuss the city's unfunded pension.
Pension liability, yes, sir.
And I believe, where are we in terms of the target for meeting our unfunded targets?
Indeed. Very good news on this front. You know, again, I think this is where, just to connect the dots, this is where that 200 or 300 some odd $1,000 can come into play, right? Or the savings come into play, because hopefully over time, what that ends up doing is helping us to achieve, as I always like to say, nirvana state, which is 100% fully funded, right? That's the goal, hopefully, that we get there, and I'll speak to that in a moment. But when we're talking about measuring the unfunded pension liability, we're really talking about 2 points. One, I think it's important to set the context. Anytime you talk about that unfunded liability, there's an assumption, or there's a bunch of assumptions built into all of this analysis, one of which is particularly critical, and that's a rate of return 7.2%. Right? We've been able to exceed that most recently, but that's not always the case. We run into down markets, right? And so that's not always the case. We're experiencing a slight downturn now in our market. And so I think the point there is that any of our investments on the pension side are subject to market fluctuation. It's important. So when we look at unfunded pension liabilities with a 7.2% rate of return as a reference, the unfunded actuarial liability, which is the valuation, that valuation is, you know, where we actually have every 2 years, we pay our actuary to come in and do a valuation which helps determine other budget matters. That valuation is set at $84.2 million as unfunded pension liability. However, the net pension liability, which is slightly different, that's when we start talking about market value versus actuarial value. And you'll see that articulated in the next slide as well. It's not off, $84.8 million. Now, there's a secondary question here, if I may jump right in?
Yes.
Mr. Chair? Great. The city's track record of exceeding previous ARC targets comparative to the future ARC targets that I list below gives me great confidence that the city will be able to meet all of its future ARC targets. So you see there listed below the it's now referred to as ADC, actuarial determined contribution, but we're talking this same requirement. ADC for 2024 is 13.2 million, and the ADC for fiscal year 2025 is estimated at 13.1 million. If I may jump right to the next slide.
Yes, you may.
Yep, thank you, sir. You'll see that the city has met or exceeded our ADC over the past 3 fiscal years. And so we've articulated what those were before. The ADC in 2021 was just shy of 17 million. We funded 17.3. 2022, it was 17.3, and we funded 17.3. 2023, it was 17.2, and we funded 19.2. So based on that and what the numbers are, as we show in the previous shown in the previous slide, I feel confident that we won't have any issue based on the performance as well of the pension fund.
Okay, and then if we move to 6B, how do we compare against in terms of meeting our targets, how do we compare against the state and county?
Yes. Well, the city of Wilmington's performing well comparatively. You'll see there the Newcastle County net pension liability, 248 million. They assume a 7% discount rate, okay? Their ADC was 28.5, and you see the state of Delaware's numbers there as well. The bullet points below are there just to give context, right? So there are certain assumptions and data and methods used to determine these liabilities that we're articulating above, and those are pulled directly from the financial reports for their respective institutions. And then I included, because at the end of the day, when you talk about net unfunded pension liability, you can't talk about that side of the coin without talking about the other side of the coin, which everyone wants to know is, when do you get to fully funded, right? When are you in a position that you're fully funded your pension? When what that means is very simply is that every obligation that we have, remember, these plans are closed. So there's been no new participants for years in these legacy plans. And so we know the body of folks that we have in these plans because they are closed. So the question then is when do we get to a point where we have enough money invested across the pension plan to say that, yes, we can meet every obligation that we have if we don't make another dollar? That's what 100% funded means. And so you'll see there some comparative information for what's going on with Newcastle County. Their plan, 67% funded. The state pension plan, 86% funded. That MVA just means a market value assessment. Again, these funds are invested in the market, so it can fluctuate, which will change where we stand based on that fluctuation. But the way it stands now, based on that 2023 financial reporting, that's what this data is coming from. We were fortunate, we performed quite well, as I mentioned. The city's plan had a 9.56% return on assets in the fiscal year ending 2023. The city is currently 76% toward reaching its goal of a fully funded pension. Again, that's based on market value of assets. If we assume multiple things, that very last bullet point, a host of assumptions, right, that have to stay the same. Look, I want to be clear. We know that everything does not stay the same. It's the nature of the market. But for discussion purposes, we have to make certain assumptions, and that's what we articulate here. Based on those assumptions, we anticipate the plan will be fully funded by fiscal year end 2032.
All right. Thank you very much, Treasurer Sims.
Yes, sir.
We'll jump to question 7. If you talk about what current pension plans exist and the number of those plans.
Indeed. So you'll see them here. We mentioned earlier we have 6 legacy plans here at the City of Wilmington. They're articulated right there, and how many folks participate in those plans. And then, of course, there's the state of, then I have to start to include this because I think it's important. Because the city plans are closed and have been closed for some time, I tossed in the numbers for the state, county, municipal plan as well.
Okay, excellent. All right. Can you discuss, moving to question 8, discuss your planned use of approximately $1 million in consultant budget lines?
Certainly. So much the same as what we do, and we've done, I should say, year over year for the last several budget presentations. I broke out the plans for what we plan on doing as general fund comparative to the pension fund. So you see there we've continue to engage PFM Group for cash management services, basically treasury operations consulting, right? Best practices. Are we doing, again, to your point, I think a bit earlier, Mr. Chair, we are a lean shop. And so leveraging the expertise of consultants who have a long-standing history with the city, but also working with our partners as well throughout the state, but also working with other institutions of our size and greater. They give us great perspective. And so on how we can do things differently, better, or for that matter, omit. On an accounting side, you see for pension funds, this amount that is listed there is allocated for both fire and police pension administrative support. So when you talk about the police pension board or the fire pension board, they have their independent and own pension administrators as well, pension secretaries as well. So that's there in support. Trustee fees, paid to banks, trustee service and pension managers. We do have a OCIO, which stands for Outsourced Chief Investment Officer relationship with our current advisor. That was one of the changes that I mentioned at the outset that we made, strategic changes to reduce risk. So we increased our relationship or deepened our relationship with our investment advisor from, there's 3 categories, 316, 323, and 338. We increased it to 338 relationship, which basically means we've engaged with the advisor to be able to make certain changes on our behalf. However, they have to do it within the parameters that we've set in the investment policy statement. So what it does is takes a lean shop and just makes us a lot more efficient, which is one of our priorities, right? So now we tell the investment manager, the investment advisor, what the parameters for investments are, and they are now empowered to go make those changes without having to get our step-by-step approval, because we've essentially given them the approval within the guidelines. Now, we couple that with a rebalancing and portfolio reviews, which happen on a weekly basis. So we still have a very, very, very hands-on with respect to what's happening, but that has helped us. Going to that OCIO, or Outsourced Chief Investment Officer strategy, has helped us to execute on the priority of reducing the fiduciary risk the city has been carrying for decades, to make those changes, number one. And number two, it also helped us achieve our bullet point number 2, which was to reduce our fee expense ratio. So although we're paying an additional fee to bump up from 316 to 338, we're saving significantly on our investment manager fees because of the deep relationship that the advisor has with these investment management firms, right? And that's that net 0.16, 0.13 that I was speaking about at the outset, that in savings that comes to a 300.
And Treasurer, are any of these vendors DBEs?
They are. I have an entire slide here for it on the next page. So if we can go to the next slide. So, back to our earlier point, the third pillar of our administration is around diversity, equity, right? And so that was one of the most important things on my agenda coming into office, and we started to institute these changes going back to mid-2021, working with the pension board and our advisor. So you see here on the general fund side, we have one with Ajita & Co. doing our bookkeeping services for one of our component units. Continuity is very important for me, Mr. Chair. I think it's important, right? And so although we do not have evergreen contracts, those year over year that just auto-renew, we have continued to deepen the relationship with our external auditor, as well as our debt advisor, as you see there, and our actuaries. Because that context, that continuity, that information transfer is very critical, particularly as we were moving through COVID and keeping the integrity of our records. So in the pensions fund side, you see the breakout there, as I mentioned, requiring 51%. We're currently at 61% with MWBE, and that's over $180 million invested. And you see, as of 3/31, I just snapshot and dropped in. That's what the breakout looks like across minority women business enterprises specific to investment managers. And that's as of our 3/31 pension report.
Okay. All right, very well. And we could go to your organizational chart. Anything to highlight there?
No, sir. These are all consistent positions that we've had in the office for some time.
Okay. All right. We are running short on time, so I did want to hit some questions first.
Of course.
I have a question.
I had I'm going to just hit on this, is the salary adjustment. I know the PFM did have the study. So did I hear you right? So the town of Newark and Dover, the treasurer, that salary is higher than the city of Wilmington?
Yes, sir.
What is the amount that they manage? Is it even comparative to the amount managed by the city of Wilmington?
There are several charts included in there, office budget. So interestingly enough, right, the Office of the Treasurer for City of Wilmington has the office budget, as you see here. A lot of it is for pension as well. But in the chart, it's the fourth highest out of all of our peers. And this is, I mean, across 12 different counterparts. So it's in the top third of all, in terms of office budget size, but it's in the bottom third, actually probably bottom 10 of salary.
So
I think that answers.
we have to right size that, okay.
So.
And I know we're gonna go some questions. I would like to credit you, for years that we've been doing this, and we talk about the disparity study, and every department we go through, we ask the same questions time after time, but you've actually put this in writing, and given your investments to minority and women
Yes, sir.
businesses, and especially minority businesses. I have to say, I don't think any department in the city does that. So I don't know if I can speak for my colleagues, but I know I am very impressed by that, as you've
Thank you.
gotten the money to the community, that just needs the opportunity. So I would thank you for that.
It's my pleasure, and I
And,
appreciate the acknowledgement. Thank you, sir.
You're doing a great job there. So I'll turn it over to my colleague.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too would like to congratulate you. It was one of the things I noted, that you are investing in some DBs, because as Mr. Chair stated, you don't see that in any other department, and you did put it in writing. So I want to say thank you. You did a real thorough job, and you seem to be really doing a great job in this position. But I would like to ask a question.
Thank you.
The back, in the back for us, Director, why isn't your picture on here? I mentioned this, I put in a piece of legislation, and your picture's not here. Your picture should be here. The operation manager should be here. I don't understand why this is so hard, because everybody has their own ID. We go to National League of City, I go to Newcastle County, I go to different meetings, and on the organizational chart, you are able to see who is in various positions. I did see it for Public Works, and I think one or two other ones, but the job that you're doing, you definitely should, your face should definitely be on here, because you're doing an outstanding job.
Councilperson
Yes,
Oliver,
Chief of
thank you.
Staff.
So just want to let you know that we took note to that, and every single department had their pictures on the organizational chart.
I was saying, not on this one, I'm saying.
Oh, on,
It was just on, I just said,
I'm the lone.
that's what I said on the other ones, that's it. I'm like, what is going on that he don't have his?
We will make that change,
Okay.
and I appreciate
Yeah, I see it
the
on,
spirit.
you missed it, I said on his, and nobody's on here, and just wanted to stress that, your department is really doing a thorough job, and even just with you even explaining everything and breaking everything down, and I will get in touch with you regarding this piece of legislation.
We're happy to help.
Because there was a gap when you mentioned that, and I wouldn't want nobody to miss out on their increase because it's not in here, so we can
Yes,
discuss
ma'am.
whoever.
I hope I didn't belabor the point too much, but I did want to highlight it because I just think
I'm glad-
it's just so critical, right?
That's why I
mean,
came to that, I wanted to hear that.
there's folks who receive $9,000 payments,
Right.
right? I get the letters. I have cards upstairs, right? that
They
folks-
deserve it.
Not only do they deserve it, but they weren't looking for it. They,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean? They didn't seek it out, and there's no major announcement. We just go about doing our job, and then a $9,000 check shows up in the mail.
Yeah.
That's a blessing, and
Yes.
especially for folks again who are making. So just a quick math on that, right? I mean, for someone who's making, let's just say, $30,000 a year in benefits, if they were to get a 1% adjustment, COLA adjustment, you do that math. How long would it take? And then they miss out on $9,000 the next year,
Right, on the humble.
right? And
We
so
wanna close
just
that gap.
coordinating to make sure that we are all working together. Back to one of my pillars of just collaborative work. I want you to know the Treasurer's Office is here to do that. Please do let us know. Keep us in the loop with this kind of any legislation that pertains to what we're doing. We're happy to be able to help.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Other questions from council members? Treasurer Sims? Okay. I'm gonna kick it to anybody on Zoom. Yeah. All right, I'll open the floor for public comment. All right, I'll turn it then back for council for any final comments or questions. Vice Chair Harley?
Yes, I just wanted to commend Treasurer Sims on a thorough explanation on everything. And the reason why I don't have any questions is because you explained everything. So that's a good thing. So thank you. I really appreciate seeing the increase in the community support. And I also noticed where you mentioned how you're always trying to partner with other organizations. I think that's great as well. And I think maybe I'll try to reach out offline to find out if there's any opportunities where, as the council member, there may be opportunities where I can also partner in as well, because I'm finding those partnerships really make a big difference.
They do.
Yeah, especially when, there's this high expectation from these organizations, and then you partner with 2 or 3 other organizations, you can hit the goal, and it's a win-win for everybody.
For everyone. Indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're looking, folks in the community are looking for us to be present, right? And I think
Correct.
that's very important, and it can't go understated, or for that matter, overstated enough, right?
Agreed.
People want to see the city in the community and the city's representatives in the community, and they want to know that we care about what's happening, not just in a nominal sense, but in a financial sense, and getting behind supporting their work. And so for us, it's really about educational, social, cultural enrichment opportunities. Whenever we can leverage our relationship, whenever we can leverage our resources to help support those endeavors, you can consider it done. But at first, as I always used to mention, our first 3 years or so, we really needed to look inward to make sure that we had things running, because we are a lean shop and it's about efficiency. And we wanted to make some substantive changes that I hope we've been able to articulate. And so now that I want to say ease off the throttle a little bit, but the fact of the matter is that this is my 4th year. And so I really want to continue to support as much as I can. So you saw the reallocation in the budget.
Yes, thank you.
My pleasure.
Councilmember Bracy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to echo what Councilmember Harley stated, in the fact that it's very impressive that not only are you managing the city's money well, but you're engaging with the community in a way that is unique and important for a city treasurer. So I also would love to explore opportunities where we could partner. Financial literacy, entrepreneurship, all of those subjects are things that I know a lot of the council members are very interested in engaging with community organizations around, and we do support. But if we're able to leverage and work together on some, activities, I would love to do that as well.
You both will be hearing from me shortly. Cheers.
All right, very
Thank
well.
you, Mr. Chair.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. Again, very thorough. I think that's why the questions are limited. So you're impressive as always. And again, keep up the great work in terms of your department. And I know there's some follow-up needed on that legislative item, and I know you will do that as well. So
Indeed.
at this time, I would like to thank again Mr. Hassan from OMB. Thank you for taking part in this presentation, and Treasurer Sims and Deputy Treasurer Lance. We appreciate your hard work as always. If there's any follow-up necessary, please, again, make sure to follow up with Ms. Marshall Bass Knight.
Will
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, everyone.
Yep. And at this time, we've reached the conclusion of the Treasurer's Office presentation. At this time, we're running right on time, so we'll have a 10-minute break. So we'll reconvene at 6:06. Good evening, Wilmington. Welcome to day 5 of the City Council budget hearings. We just finished with, we're coming back for a 10-minute break as we just finished with the Treasurer's Department. Now we are back to the agenda. We have Information Technology Department and IT Department. We've been joined by Chief of Staff Washington, of course, Chief of Staff Mona Parikh, and Chief Financial Officer Marshall Bassnight are with us as well. And we have Information and Technology Director Damon May. Thank you for joining us this evening. So at this time, I will call to order the Finance Committee budget hearing for Office of Information Technology. I will first do a quick roll call of the Finance Committee members. Vice Chair Harley, 4th District.
Present.
Councilmember Bracy,
Present.
at large.
Present.
Councilmember Field, 8th District. Councilmember Spadola, at large.
Present.
Council President Congo. All right. I'd like to also recognize other councilpersons in attention in attendance. Believe
I'm
we-
sorry, I'm present. I'm sorry.
Yes, I had you down. I have it. Councilmember Mills, at large.
Present.
Councilmember Cabrera. Councilmember.
Present.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Fields, 5th District. Councilmember Darby, 2nd District. Councilmember White, believe it's excused. Councilmember McCoy, 6th District. Okay, all right. And similar to our protocol as we've been normally doing, I ask that my colleagues, again, if you're in chambers or in virtual, please raise your hand if you have any questions. Similar to the procedure as with most departments, we're just going to go to questions first. Preset questions, so we make sure we get through the material, and then we, of course, can kick it off if there's any. Make sure to write down the question you have, and then we will have a question and answer afterwards. For public comment, we're limited to 3 minutes due to time constraints, as we only have 90 minutes for this specified hearing. And any follow-up that is not answered during the budget hearing, we will make sure Ms. Marshall Bassnight from City Council follows up with any data or any information necessary, and it will be posted on our City Council budget website, as it always has, as we believe in a transparent, data-driven council. Again, I believe we are joined by Mr. Winkler right now, okay, from OMB. Then Mr. May, or Director May, it will be your time. So I will cede the floor to Mr. Winkler to give the OMB overview, and then we'll dive into Director May.
All right, thank you, and good evening, Chairman Johnson and members of council. This evening, I'll be providing the overview of the information technologies budget. All right, next slide. Okay, so the proposed FY 2025 budget is $11.4 million, which is up $898,000, or 8.6%, compared to the FY 2024 budget. Personal services total $2.4 million, up $72,000, or 3.1%. MS&E is also up with an increase of $823,000, or 11.4%, compared to the FY24 budget. And finally, total staffing is 21 FTE, which is unchanged from FY24. Next slide. All right, so let's take a look here at the major funding changes for FY25, starting with personal services. Total salaries and wages have increased by $82,000, which is driven mainly by the cost of implementing the city's classification and compensation study recommendations, combined with mandatory step increases. Next, total MS&E is up $823,000. This includes nearly $160,000 to outfit the fire department's proposed EMS division, with $136,000 budgeted for communications equipment, such as ambulance radios, and nearly $24,000 budgeted for tablets and PCs. In addition, consultants' costs in data processing have increased by a net $105,000 to a new total of nearly $2 million. This includes an additional $106,000 for payroll processing support and $96,000 for a network technician. Now, these increases are partially offset by a $100,000 reduction in IT project manager funding. Next slide. Okay, so computer software non-capital is up a net $109,000, which is the result of three major things. First, a $50,000 increase to the existing third line audit software contract. Second, the addition of $40,000 for B2G Now supplier diversity compliance software. And third, a $20,000 increase to the Proofpoint cybersecurity software contract. Computer software licenses are also up by a net $448,000, or 24.9%. The largest element of this is the inclusion of $230,000 for UKG timekeeping software, which was previously called Kronos. This was eliminated from the FY24 budget as part of the effort to outsource the city's payroll function. However, as this outsourcing has been deferred pending further analysis, UKG funding has been restored into the FY25 budget. Now, in addition, the Tyler Munis license fee is up about $130,000, or 16%. And finally, $50,000 has been added to replace the WorldDocs document software for the law department. All right, so that concludes my presentation on the Department of the Information Technology's budget. If you have any questions related to the IT budget, I'm happy to take them now. Otherwise, Chair, the floor is yours.
All right. Any questions from members of council regarding O&B in the IT department? All right. Mr. Winkler, you are off the hook for now. I will then turn it over to Director May. And of course, Director May, please make sure to introduce anyone from your team that is either here in person or on Zoom. So we can go with your overview and then dive into question and answer.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And good evening, members of council. Thank you for allowing me the time tonight to present the Department of Information Technology's FY25 budget. Before I get started, I just want to thank my wonderful staff for all the exceptional work that they do and the numerous hours that they work around the clock to make sure that the city is operational and secure and available to our employees and constituents. So as always, we start off with an overview of the IT department. I did want to say before I started that thanks to our friends at Microsoft, I was able to get a little bit of a preview of Microsoft Copilot, which is Microsoft's version of generative AI similar to ChatGPT. And so this presentation was completed with, enhanced and completed with AI technology. So this may be one of the first budget
Question, Director May, is AI going to be giving the presentation?
Yeah. But I am really here. AI.
So I'm just asking. I've seen different things. So, is it going to be an AI voice or?
No.
Oh.
It's just AI was utilized to generate the presentation.
You know, in the future, maybe budget hearings will be conducted by
possibly.
AI.
Possibly.
I would second that.
But if I say anything wrong tonight, then it's AI's fault, not mine. So
Okay, gotcha.
So the IT department is composed of 6 units, which are listed there. Next slide, please. So this is our mission statement. These are our core values. And these are our strategic priorities for FY25.
Let's dive into the questions. So question number 1, considering the massive amount of employees at any time during the workday, can you share how your department has addressed bandwidth issues for the city?
Okay. So this budget provides for a 1 gigabyte WAN and internet connection throughout the city. I have slides, I have diagrams on the other slides that will detail the utilization of the network channels, but what we're seeing here is that we have enough bandwidth for the foreseeable future, both internet and WAN connectivity. What you're seeing here is the internet connection right now, and what you're seeing is a percentage of consumption of the pipe. This is over a 1 month period, and during that period, we have not even topped out 50%, which gives us a great deal of bandwidth and overhead for any potential technology that we might want to use. The green lines indicate outbound traffic going out of the building, and the blue traffic indicates traffic coming in. All right, next slide, please. This slide demonstrates the connection for the WAN, the wide area network, which is the connection, the mesh network connection between each of the buildings. And so as you see here, it is not a percentage of consumption, but it is showing the actual usage. But as you can see, we are not topping out over about 25% of the uses of the pipe. So it is very important to kind of maintain this, even though so the spikes that you see are normally from replication or backup traffic that we do to send different things up to the cloud. So we have plenty of overhead there for voice communications, for data transfer, and for cloud or any other technologies.
We can dive into question number 2. How can you explain how your budget collaborates local tech talent and young entrepreneurs in Wilmington as to, how they can get involved in helping move the city forward and invest in STEM jobs?
Okay. So 100K is going to be allocated this year for community initiatives. Before, this was allocated under a heading that was called internship. I can't remember what it was. I can't remember, but it was under a heading for internships. And so we were able to realize a cost savings due to a federal grant that we'll be receiving, and we shifted that money into community initiatives. And so the funds will be focused on the following projects: expansion of the city's internship programs, collaboration with the Parks Department on STEM and STEAM initiatives, and community outreach events partnered with local groups, organizations, and businesses. Also, there is $60K allocated for Gartner Incorporated, information research and analytics company that we use.
Okay.
So first, I'd like to go over, so to address the first part with our internships is where we, next slide. Our internships are where we generally engage the youth and young people in technology here. We've been using the Tech Impact Program. It's been our staple program for the past almost 10 years to give people a chance to get into technology and get experience. And we have hired several employees here that are exceptional employees and have learned a lot through technology. We also have given other people who have internshiped here a lot of exposure to be able to move forward and gain jobs elsewhere in technology.
The community engagement piece.
Sorry, I was having some difficulties. So next piece is community engagement. In order to help cultivate the technological leaders of the future, we need to engage them early. And so we need to be able to do programs to get out there in front of them, get them to understand new technologies, and we need to be able to make sure that they have appropriate equipment and connectivity to the internet. While we are primarily an internal-facing department, we have started to begin to work with parks to be able to be the route for us to be able to get out and work externally with the community. And so we started partnering with parks earlier this year on several different initiatives. One thing that we were able to do was, with some cost savings that we realized last year, we were able to provide them with a 85-inch mobile Surface Hub unit to enhance some of their programs at the William Hicks Anderson Center. As well, I was able to make an introduction and bring in a program called Kai Coders, which is a really wonderful STEAM program, STEAM being science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, the addition of the arts along with the normal STEM program that will allow kids to, once it debuts in Wilmington, it'll allow kids to be able to not just do the coding aspect of sitting behind the computer to do the coding, but to also come out with a tangible outcome. It's had a tactile portion to it that will allow them to actually create something along the lines of art and music, and that really seems like that interests kids and drives engagement.
Okay. All right. And I believe to talk about Cybersecurity Month, I believe you had some details on that. Anything to highlight?
Yeah, the only thing to really highlight is that the Cybersecurity Month program has been very successful here in engaging our staff and bolstering our ability to to keep the city secure. And as we hold a lot of the activities in the publicly, we have a lot of interest from the public about whether or not they could take part in it. And a lot of my staff, in particular Dallas Flugrad, who is very responsible for growing this initiative, has kind of pushed the idea to be able to see if there were some things that we could do to engage the public. So this year, we'd like to take this initiative public and partner with several entities around the city. And we think that we can really make a difference with citizens and businesses to help them also learn how to secure. The more we learn, the more we help them secure, the better that we help secure ourselves too, because we actually work with a lot of these entities. So that's a big part of our plan this year, is to, during November, to take this, start the process of taking this citywide.
All right. Very well. And I believe you, anything to highlight with staying current? How do you make sure
So-
your department does that?
Right. So the chief, that's one of my chief responsibilities as the director of IT, is to make sure that the city's network infrastructure is, up to date and following best practices, and it's secure. Take this very seriously, and I do this and perform this task by partnering with a lot of other state and local government entities, such as DTI, Delaware Division of Technology and Information, Newcastle County, and the city of Newark are some of our partners that we work with frequently. Also, we work with Homeland Security's CISA, the Cybersecurity and Information Agency, for security-related tasks. And I'm also a member of the Cybersecurity Coalition Collaboration Forum, which meets in Philadelphia and is a collective of cybersecurity information specialists from in the region. So there's a lot of people from Delaware, from different entities and organizations in Delaware that we meet there, and we collaborate on ideas. Also, one of the chief tools that I use is Gartner Incorporated. So Gartner is the nation's foremost leader in information technology research and analytics. And from there, we gain a lot of information about best practices. We're able to do get metrics for our performance measures, how secure we are. And also, it allows me to interface with other CIOs that are from a similar background as mine, as far as municipalities, to exchange ideas and discuss different challenges that they're experiencing as well.
All right, we can move to question 3. If you can go into, and there's multiple subparts to this question. It's a fairly large consultant budget at $2.1 million, $95,000 increase over last fiscal year. Can you discuss I guess just first off, how the consultant expertise bolsters your team, since you do have 21 full-time staff members?
So we typically use consultants to, in situations where we require skill or expertise or special knowledge that's not reflective of our internal staff. And for situations that we might find a challenge in being able to staff regularly for, and for sometimes we're limited term engagement. So that's where we typically bring those in. What you're seeing, the consultants that we're bringing in are for a lot of our technology that is very high-end. Our storage technologies are some of our high-end Microsoft back-end technology that our regular staff is still trying to get a grasp of and still trying to learn to transfer those skills over. So the particular increase that we're talking about here is for the network technician consultant and for the payroll processing contractor. So the network technician consultant was brought in to be able to help us make up some of the lag that we have for some of our internal infrastructure projects that we need to get completed by the close of the year. Due to a lot of the rise in cybersecurity risks, we don't have a separate operations team and security team like many entities. And so whenever we have a security issue, which sometimes seems like it's every week, my team has to stop and shift gears over to the security side while we investigate and it sometimes have to remediate. And so this person is being brought in to be dedicated specifically to the task of performing some of the infrastructure upgrades to get us up to speed, because these issues can turn into security issues as well. The payroll processing contractor was needed to be brought back. This was a part of our budget in previous years, but as Rob had mentioned, during the payroll outsourcing period, we did not renew it because of that impending project. But once that did not move forward, we needed to bring this individual back. The process to IT's part of the process to facilitate payment for city employees is fairly rigorous and takes at least 2 to 3 days sometimes off of my staff, depending on whose assignment is for that week. This causes a lot of disruptions for their daily operational tasks, for any projects that they're working on. And we found that bringing this individual back has given us almost a 40% increase in our capacity and able to get things done. The apps unit is a critical part of the function of the city.
Okay. All right, and can you discuss the business analyst consultant? Fine.
Yes. So originally we had in the budget that we were requesting 2 business analyst consultants because we had 2 projects that had coinciding timelines. We've since been able to, the timelines have shifted, so we now only need 1 business analyst consultant. And as before, the business analyst consultant is a very critical piece of our team to be able to. One of our biggest issues that we've had at the city is processes that are not really properly aligned with the information technology. And it's just one of the things, bad things go in and bad things come out. This position is here to help us better utilize the technology and better analyze before we implement a new technology, or even if we try to do different changes with technology. This position sets down with the groups that are making the change and works to define the proper requirements so that they get a beneficial result at the end.
Anything to highlight with the projects? If you go to the next slide, anything to highlight with the projects that have been completed?
Yes, I just wanted to say that, last year was our first year really trying the project manager and the business analyst consultant, and they both combined to do some really impactful work for the city. First of all, we completed the Tyler Munis upgrade project, the ERP upgrade project of 2021 in record time. Generally, when we've done a Munis upgrade, it's taken over 4 months, but with our project manager that we brought on board, we were able to get this down to about 2 months, and with a significantly reduced amount of errors. Like I think we had like 6 overall errors with the system when we went over, and we were up and running smoothly afterward. It's always been an issue and a challenge whenever we went to upgrade with Tyler. So right there, that was a huge win. We also had standardization of the city's project management processes, which have led to us being able to complete projects smoothly on time and better close out on projects. That's always been a challenge in the past.
No.
Go ahead.
Anything to highlight with the consultants? With the consultants currently working for IT?
Let's see. There are 9 consultants working with the city so far. We have 5 consultants working from Diamond Technologies, 3 from Brandywine Technology Solutions, and we have a consultancy with Navisite formerly RDX, which is a kind of a round robin. It's always one consultant working with us, but they provide a consultant on a rotating basis. So it counts as one consultant actively working with us.
And could you, if you go to the next slide, I guess the breakdown between your vendors, so Diamond, anything to highlight with that company?
Yeah, so with Diamond, we currently have one consultant working as the operations manager for the team, one working as a network architect, and one, as I mentioned before, the network technician consultant. We have one person working as our data scientist, and we have one person working as our help desk support analyst. We also receive CISO, cybersecurity, information security officer, assistance from Diamond, and and security assistance from Diamond in the event of any type of cybersecurity incidents or if we have an exercise.
All right. Go to the next slide. You mind just any highlights of Brandywine?
Brandywine is where we've tapped for the IT project manager, business analyst position, and for the business analyst, and for the payroll processing contractor. Sorry.
All right. Anything to highlight with the, believe the length of contracts of some of these vendors?
No, nothing to
Okay.
highlight.
All right. All right, very well. Let's move into question 4. Can you talk about the equipment line account category, which is a total of $2.9 million, and we've seen that's about a $500,000 increase over last fiscal year. Can you give some highlights there?
Yes, so there is a net $77,000 reduction on the actual equipment line for non-capitalized equipment. And this is due to a lot of fewer external requests outside of the IT department for equipment and monitors and other related technology. But the increase is due to the for software related expenses. So for new software requests, the law department is the WorldDoc software is going end of life. We haven't been given a date, but we have been put on notification that it will be going end of life, and so we're now currently searching for an alternative to WorldDocs, which is why we requested the $50,000 for that, because as we've been instructed by the group that maintains it, is that the software now costs exponentially more than it cost when we adopted WorldDocs. Let's see. And so we also requested additional funding to for the potential upcoming transition next year for council and for the mayor's office. So to upgrade equipment, or as the equipment is approaching end of life in FY2025.
Okay. Go to the next page. I guess you just have all the next page.
Yeah.
W19. You have all the, I guess, the new software, are those new software requests?
These are not new software requests. These are all of the contracts, the active software contracts that we have.
All right. Moving question 5, can you discuss the communications account groupings?
Okay. So the $1.3 million requested will be used as follows. There's 809K that's allocated for telephone direct charge. That includes like all of our high-speed lines, everything with that. There's 414K that's requested for mobile airtime, which handles all of our wireless. That's up a bit in anticipation of requests for new wireless devices and for new cell phones in the coming year. And the WPD camera network is up by $20,000 at 100K. The next slide has a chart of our current number of cell phones and other mobile devices, tablets, and laptops. These devices are audited on an annual basis in the cell phones to make sure that the people who need the phones have the phones, and any of the additional extra phones are turned off or deactivated.
All right. Can you move into question 6? So you could discuss the contracted maintenance accounts line, which I believe had an increase over last fiscal year.
So in the communications division, the repairs to equipment increased to $120,000. And this increase was due to $67,000 allocated for repairs to the radio tower at Rodney Reservoir. And funds were moved from the telephone direct charge line into this line in the amount of $44,000. And that covers our VoIP phone maintenance contract. So it's just a shifting of funds for the 44K.
Okay. Moving to question 7, you could discuss any items of note in the capital lease program.
So the money allocated, the money that you see listed is as a result of the capital purchase last year for the new cell phone, the new radio devices that were required due to the state of Delaware's frequency operating change. And so it'll be on an annual basis that we have to that we pay for this as it was leased. It was in the capital lease, and we purchased a total of 516 radios. We still are waiting for the state to schedule with municipalities to complete the transfer, but we have all the equipment. The typical life of the radios are 8 to 10 years, barring no change in the technology used to communicate.
And just to clarify, so we have the right lingo, radios, is this for police and fire or just police?
Police and fire. Police, fire, and some of the other departments like Public Works and everything as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Just moving to question 7, any highlights with the organizational chart?
No.
Yep, very well. Thank you for the comprehensive overview, Director May. I'll now turn to my colleagues for any questions. Well, actually, before I do that, I do have one question. I don't know if it's more appropriate for law department, but is the intent to use World Docs, or do you move to a different case management software?
The intent is so World Docs won't exist anymore. We do have a company that has purchased World Docs, and that is who they've previewed first. But the intent is, particularly with the help of the business analyst, to sit down and determine the requirements. Like one of the IT's requirements is we like to do as many things as we can with cloud-based technologies. We definitely want to make sure that it can take advantage of AI, which this program can, and everything. And so they are looking to see what will be the best fit for them.
Okay, good,
And I think the law department's pretty
about
open.
10 years ago when I was in law department, it was not very good.
Yeah,
And I get that software probably needs to be retired. So
Yeah, it
just
does.
throwing
And
my
the
2
software that
cents.
we're looking at is kind of light years beyond that.
Excellent, excellent. All right, very good. And just lastly on the cameras, so your department is in charge of implementing the continued expansion of the, I guess, the downtown or the neighborhood camera program.
We assist with the networking portion of it, but we're not in charge of the logistical part.
So is that
That's the
budget
police
line
department.
okay, so it's in police department's budget?
Well, the cameras, the new cameras that you're speaking of, that is coming out of ARPA funds. So the expansion of the cameras are coming out of ARPA dollars.
Okay. All right. Very well. All right. Councilmember Cabrera. I see your hands raised. Is it on purpose?
No, I didn't raise my hand. Maybe that's
Oh, it was still raised. The VIT, if you could put her hand down. All right. Thank you. Any questions from members of council? All right. Chambers are virtual. All right. I'm going to now turn it to members of the public for any public comment. All right. Seeing none, I'll turn it back to council for any final comments or questions. Seeing none, I would just again thank you, Director May, and your team, both in person and virtual, as you are the backbone of the city. So we appreciate the efforts of your team aren't realized, I think, until something goes wrong. Then people realize just how important you are. So again, I appreciate that, and I like to with the highlight. It's great to see again, like with Treasurer Sims, the continued renewed focus on investing in community, especially STEM, as that is the wave of the future. So
Yeah, often in IT, we don't get an opportunity to have an impact directly. You know, it's always kind of we're doing something working with the equipment and machines. So it really is great to be able to do something. And the mayor has always encouraged me, you know, from the beginning. He's always encouraged us to do as much as we can and work in the community. So I appreciate the support from the mayor and chief of staff in Washington.
all right. Well, thank you very much. And again, I'd like to thank Mr. Winkler, of course, Director Greco for joining us as well. Any follow-up information necessary from tonight, of course, please provide to Ms. Marshall Bassnight. All right. And I would like to thank, in closing, I'd like to thank Mr. Naheed Hassan, who's with us from OMB as well. Of course, Treasurer Sims, Director May, and those who presented tonight. And you, of course, back home who have tuned in to this hearing. So we are headed to day 6 of the budget hearings. We will be, we are scheduled for this upcoming Wednesday, April 17th at 4:30 p.m. So we are quick turnaround. And we do have a small legislative item that actually is first. It's a resolution regarding grant funds to City of Wilmington's Parks Department, sponsored by Councilmember McCoy. And then right after that, we will then have Parks and Recreation Department, then follow up by Law Department. So please, as always, tune into WITN Channel 22 to watch the meeting. You can also watch online at WITN22.org. And as always, budget information is and answers and data is available on our City Council budget website at www.wilmdebudget.org. And at this time, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right. Is there a second?
Everybody's gone.
All right. I will second it. And all those in favor? Aye. All right. None opposed. The meeting has adjourned. See everybody on Wednesday.